Welcome back to another episode of the Holocore. Today's file, Sheilun, Staff of the Mists. The history of Pandaria. While its pages are filled with tales of heroism and tyranny, many of its most important chapters and people hold connection to the infamous weapon Sheilun. The staff's origins start during the time of Lei Shen, the first emperor of the Mogu Empire. After a devastating battle with Xuan the White Tiger, one of the wild gods of Kalimdor, Lei Shen enslaved the Pandaran people and chained the White Tiger spirit to the highest peak in the land. For millennia, Xuan helplessly watched as the Pandaran were used for slave labor, until one day the flames of rebellion began to spread. A Pandaran slave by the name of Kang noted that the Mogu's reliance on slave labor made them weak. In secret, Kang inspired his fellow slaves, decreeing that their enslavement had made them resilient, stronger, and sharp of mind. Kang would teach his followers how to fight without weapons through martial arts, and soon he would become known as Kang, Fist of the First Dawn. Kang and his monks would later flee into the mountain range of Kunlai, where they stumbled across the prison of Xuan. The White Tiger spirit would teach them about strength, both in its raw physical form and the strength of endurance. Xuan told Kang, "Look to the little life you find in these heights, and you will know strength." Kang looked and noticed the twisted, gnarled trees that dotted the mountain range, and realized the meaning behind Xuan's words. The trees needed to endure the harsh winds and sleet of Kunlai summit, their forms rigid and strong, their roots coiling deep. These trees would not only become the walls for Kang's monastery, but also be used to craft their first weapons, not blades like those that belonged to the Mogu, but staves. Kang would name his staff Sheilun after his son who had died at the hands of the Mogu many years before, and would bring his staff before the White Tiger who blessed it. For many years, Kang wielded Sheilun, sometimes as a mere walking stick, and other times as a defensive life-saving weapon that fought off axe, sword, and halberd. Sheilun was present through the entire Pandaran Revolution, and was there the day Kang gave his life to end the Mogu's long reign of tyranny. As both the Fist of the First Dawn and the last Mogu Emperor fell, Kang would forever be remembered for his sacrifice that freed all of Pandaria. The staff would eventually find its home in the monastery high up in the mountains. Many Pandaran monks would wield it throughout history, until one day it was sent to the last emperor of Pandaria. Shao Hao did not know of the staff's history, nor that it had been sent by the White Tiger himself, and merely thought of it as a pretty ornament fit for a ruler. Shao Hao expected a long rule of peace and comfort, for Pandaria had been without conflict for many years. On the day he received Sheilun, a Jinyu water speaker was given a terrible vision. An endless army of green fire and demons would soon invade Azeroth. Desperate to save his land, Shao Hao sought the advice of Yulon the Jade Serpent, the spirit of wisdom. Yulon told him that first he must rein in his emotions and purge himself of them if he wanted to save his land. And so, with Sheilun in hand, and his friend the Monkey King at his side, Shao Hao set off on a journey that would forever change Pandaria. Throughout the journey, Shao Hao's will would be put to the test. In Pandaria, the emotions Yulon warned about were brought to manifest, allowing despair and doubt to rise up as the insidious Shah. Shao Hao looked to the Red Crane, Chi-Ji, for aid, and rid himself of these emotions. When the Monkey King fell into the hands of the Mantid, Shao Hao found himself paralyzed with fear. Niu Xiao, the Black Ox, reminded him that fear only held his mind and not his feet. Shao Hao wrestled his fears aside and saved his friend before turning his eyes to Kunlai. Having cast aside his doubts and despair, as well as mastering his fear, Shao Hao believed himself to be ready to save Pandaria from the coming Legion threat. All he needed was an army. When Shao Hao approached the monastery high in the mountains, he demanded that the warriors who trained there submit to his authority and join his army to fight the Legion. The White Tiger who trained and watched over the fighters saw that although Shao Hao had mastered and overcome many emotions, anger still clouded him.
"Why do you fight?" the White Tiger asked. "To destroy demon hordes, to crush those who oppose me," Shao Hao answered.
Zhuan responded with a challenge. Strike any one of these monks, and they will all be yours to command. Shao Hao accepted and began his attack, swinging Sheilun in every direction. Yet no matter where he struck, the monks evaded him. Humiliated, Shao Hao's anger built up inside until it lashed out in a great explosion of negative energy. The Shah of anger, violence, and hatred erupted, screaming and howling before bearing down upon the overcome emperor. When the smoke cleared and Shao Hao opened his eyes, he saw the body of a single monk lying at his feet. The warrior had sacrificed his life for the emperor, his body broken by Shao Hao's unchecked anger.
"Again I ask, why do you fight?" "For the people I protect," Shao Hao replied. "For them, I would give my final breath."
Free from his anger, hatred, and violence, purged of his doubts, fears, and despairs, the Emperor returned to the Vale of Eternal Blossoms in the heart of his empire, radiating purity and enlightenment. As he stood there before his people, the skies darkened and green fire began to fall. The sundering had finally come. As Shao Hao looked upon his people, he saw the burdens that had clouded him massed across their faces. Doubt, despair, fear, and anger. His people had not learned the lessons he had, and no matter how much he tried, Shao Hao could not inspire the confidence they needed. Raising Sheilun above him, Shao Hao declared to his people that although he could not stop the coming storm, he would give them the time to learn the lessons he had. Free from the burdens the Jade Serpent had warned him about, Shao Hao, the last emperor of Pandaria, gave all that he was for his people and became one with the land. Through Sheilun, Shao Hao's breath and life ascended and transformed, surrounding all of Pandaria in a cloak of thick mists, protecting them from the devastation of the sundering. Sheilun would be found shortly after the Emperor's ascension and brought to the Terrace of Endless Springs, where it would serve as a historical and enlightening reminder of the lessons of the last Emperor of Pandaria.